They say no enemy is bigger than your thoughts, so why do you keep listening? The reason why most people are unhappy is because they unconsciously obey their thoughts. Their every decision, action, and feeling is controlled by what the voice in their head is saying. But this is the ultimate suffering. And if you truly want to master your life, you have to turn the voice off. First, let's start with a famous story you have probably heard, but it's time for a reminder. A grandfather is talking with his grandson. The grandfather says, "In life, there are two wolves inside of us which are always at battle. One is a good wolf, which represents things like kindness, bravery, and love. The other is a bad wolf, which represents things like greed, hatred, and fear." The grandson stops and thinks about it for a second. Then he looks up at his grandfather and says, "Grandfather, which one wins?" The grandfather replies, "The one you feed." By the end of this video, you will know exactly how to starve your negative thoughts, aka the bad wolf, so it stops controlling your life once and for all. First, you have to understand there is a separation that exists between you and your thoughts. And I know that's crazy to think about because these intrusive, obsessive thoughts, negative thoughts, seem so real, but I am here to assure you that you are not your thoughts, and you can start to consciously choose which ones you feed. There is you, your higher self, and your ego. You know that voice in your head that's yelling mean things at you day in and day out? That is your ego, aka your lower self. Your ego, this lower self, is wired to keep you comfortable and to keep you safe. But these safe thoughts often come in the form of what ifs. You can't do that. You're not good enough. Nope, not a good idea. Fear, rejection. Those thoughts are not you. They are your primitive biology trying to keep you safe by keeping you small. Then there is your higher self. This is bestie. This is your ultimate hype girl. She wants you to expand, evolve, and do the things she knows will make you happy, your soul's calling, even if it feels a little bit uncomfortable. But you barely hear her voice because she isn't as loud as the ego. She's more soft-spoken. She takes a kinder approach. And because she isn't trying to push herself into your mind, you can't really hear her. So she's kind of lost on you. Then you have you, the observer. The hidden truth is that your mind isn't always on your side, and the thoughts you have aren't always yours. You are just the observer of the good and the bad, with the ultimate gift of controlling how loud the ego yells or how loud the higher self yells, by which one you feed with your attention. So here's the way you are going to starve your ego and crank up the volume on your higher self, aka your ultimate hype girl. The first step is to do a brain dump. This was key for me because it does two things. One, it causes a separateness from you and your thoughts. And two, it validates you. We never say these thoughts out loud because we fear that when we say them out loud, we will make them true. When in reality, it makes the process of controlling them more manageable because now you're acknowledging them. We can't change something we ignore. For this, I recommend therapy. I have used therapy at so many different times in my life. One recently was I just moved from Canada to England, and I was having a lot of pre-moving anxiety, a lot of post-moving anxiety, and there was so much going on in my head that I needed to talk about it. However, I found it so much easier to talk with a therapist rather than just like close people in my life, because a lot of the times the close people in your life, they're doing their best to support you, but usually they'll say, "Girl, you got this, you're gonna be fine, don't worry." And it's like, I need a little bit more than that, okay? Yeah, I got that, but I need a little bit more. So with my therapist, we went through it. Like, we went through everything I was feeling. She validated my feelings and said, "Hey, it's okay to feel like this. It's totally normal." But she also challenged me to think differently and take on a new perspective, which eventually allowed me to grow into this new chapter of my life without feeling overwhelmed. So therapy is really the introductory step into controlling your thoughts. And with that being said, I'm excited to introduce BetterHelp as the paid partner of today's video. BetterHelp connects you with a credentialed therapist who is trained to listen and give you unbiased advice. That is what we need, baby. It's a really easy process to get set up. Just go to their site, you can use my link, you answer a few questions, and boom, BetterHelp matches you to a professional who has years of experience helping with struggles just like yours. One thing I personally find an amazing part of BetterHelp is you get to choose what medium you want to communicate. So you can choose from just messaging them, you can choose to have a video call, which is what what I prefer, or you can choose to just go on the phone. This is a great part of BetterHelp because it allows you to really customize your experience to what makes you feel the most comfortable. I'm gonna leave my discount code on the screen and a link in the top of my description box so you can sign up and enjoy a special discount on your first month. BetterHelp.com/Vakita, or choose Vakita Trivedi during sign up and start on the road toward a happier, healthier you. Step 2 follows the brain dump. Once we have kind of acknowledged these thoughts that we're having with neutrality and just brought some conscious awareness to these habitual thought patterns, we can start deciphering the 2 different sources of your thoughts. Understanding the 2 different sources is absolutely crucial in gaining control over them. What language your higher self speaks and what language your ego speaks. This awareness will help you quickly identify and manage them. Your ego is driven by fear, insecurity, and doubt. It's often going to sound critical, judgmental, limiting. It's always going to feel like comfort. It's always going to feel like doing the easier thing, because at the end of the day, the ego is quite sinister. It wants you to live out its agenda. It's always focused on past regrets and future anxieties. It's never in the present moment. The ego loves to feel external validation. It's fueled by other people complimenting it, validating it, reassuring it. It never allows you to step into your own sense of identity. The ego is the voice in your head that will make you snooze your alarm, eat junk food, not exercise, lay on the couch all day, doom scroll, all of those negative but very comfortable habitual patterns we fall into. That is your ego. And when you listen to these thoughts, when you give into these thoughts, you are going along with the agenda your ego has for you. It has its own specific plan for your life. And when you continuously listen to it, it just gets bigger and bigger and stronger and stronger. And the voice becomes louder and louder. And this is when you will start to really spiral, and this spiral will feel so hard to get out of. Every time you give into this thought, you believe that this is true and that you're not good enough and you're not worthy and you'll never be loved, and you can never do that because it's out of your league and you don't have the skills. As you listen, like I said, they get louder and louder, so it's so important you understanding the language between the higher self and the ego, so you know which ones to feed, so that volume starts to increase and we can start listening to the good stuff, okay? We need a little good jam, a little feel-good music. The higher self is rooted in compassion, in love, confidence, and empathy. You know that little voice in your head, that feeling in your stomach that you're meant for more, that you have this passion, this is the thing that lights you up. That is your higher self trying to speak to you. It is trying to encourage you to take that step in starting that business, in moving to that country, in quitting this job, because it knows that is where your expansion lies. It's encouraging you to get better. It's encouraging you to evolve. It's encouraging you to accept yourself and accept your gifts and take action on them. It's always going to pull you back into the present moment. It's also the voice in your head that is going to tell you to get out of bed. You snooze your alarm, it's going to say, nope, you need to get out of bed. It's the voice that is going to encourage you to have healthier habits, to do the things you know you need to do, like go to the gym, eat healthy, exercise, clean, do your manifestation protocols. If you don't have one, check out the link in my description box. Like I said earlier, your higher self is always going to hype you up, and it's going to continue to push you. Even if it's gonna be an uncomfortable thing in the moment, it knows it is going to benefit you. Now, knowing the difference between these languages, you can choose to consciously start aligning with only your higher self, which will help you foster more of this positive inner dialogue, this more inner hype girl that you've got going on. Girl, you're gonna crush it. Get out there. You've got this. You look good. Now that you know the language of the ego and how it's going to communicate with you and what it's gonna sound like versus what your higher self sounds like and what she will use to communicate with you, you now have the key to ending your suffering. You know that your ego sounds like this. So when that kind of thought pops in, you as the observer choose to not observe that thought. You don't feed it. You don't give it attention. This is where we gain control over what happens in our mind. And this is where our power comes from. If I'm not mistaken, the book, The Power of Now, refers to this concept as junk thoughts. So think of your thoughts as just flipping through a channel. Sometimes you land on a channel that you don't want to watch. What do? You don't stop and watch the channel just because you've landed on it. You just simply move on to the next channel. ignoring that past channel that you didn't want to watch and going to a more favorable channel. This is the same thing as your thoughts. You will have your ego pop in and try and slip you a thought, see if you're gonna bite, and you can simply just choose to flip to another thought, flip to a better thought. And that takes me to step number 3, which is putting in reps at the mental gym. You have to put in repetition every single day because this creates mental discipline. And the more mental discipline you foster, the more distance you create from these unwanted channels, from these junk thoughts, from the ego. The more distance you create between you and your negative thoughts, the more you really start to identify as the observer and not as the thoughts themselves. And that's why we went over the language between the ego and the higher self. So this identifying process becomes a lot easier. In the beginning, you have to hit the mental gym 2 times, 3 times a day. You have to build this mental toughness. You have to build this automatic process of identifying the thought, challenging it, saying no, turning the volume down on the ego, and choosing to go and feed the higher self and say, hey, talk to me. What do you have to tell me? I know I'm good. I know I'm worthy. I know I'm lovable. Tell me. This process starts to starve the ego because the ego is fed by your attention. When you remove your attention, you remove its food. It can no longer survive in your mind. It's there, but you can't hear it. It's no longer as loud as it used to be. It doesn't take over your mind. It doesn't infiltrate you. Its power has weakened because you've removed its feed. You've removed your attention. You want to think of your ego as that thing in Stranger Things. The more attention you give it, the more energy you give it, the more it gets fed and the stronger it becomes, the louder it becomes, and the more power it has over you. Every single day, you choose which part of your mind you want to hear and obey. One part will lead to your awakening from this mental prison, from this physical prison, while the other will continue to bring you back to it. Once you turn down the volume on your ego and you clear out all of this loudness, you can start using your mind as your superpower to manifest your dream life. Watch this video next if you want to learn how.